Human trafficking is defined as the action or practice of illegally transporting people from one country or area to another, typically for the purposes of forced labor or sexual exploitation. Everyone from infants to seniors are vulnerable, no matter gender, race, religion, or hair color. While there are factors to making an individual more likely to be targeted in such monstrous exercise, in the end of it all, anyone can be affected.
Not only does human trafficking change the life of the victim, but the victim's family, friends, and community. Human trafficking is a serious, life-threatening exploitation of oneself. The scope of this crime happening around the globe is unbelievably enormous. In Canada, human trafficking for the purpose of sexual exploitation and forced labor is more common than we see and acknowledge.
A high-risk profile in Canada would be given to Aboriginal and First Nations people, specifically women and girls, but men are still victims, just not at the same amount of risk, youth suffering from neglect or poverty in their homes, and newly landed immigrants. Sectors in our work that are used in forced labor include agriculture, construction, and hospitality. An RCMP report from January 2015 released information stating 151 individual people were convicted of hostage and sexual assault-related charges. The next year, an article from Global News said that in 2016 there were 340 reported human trafficking incidents. Over 80% of the culprits were male and were between the age of 18 and 34.
This is an outrageous amount of dangerous people walking the streets of our country, luring people for the good of themselves. There are other factors to the vulnerability level of human trafficking. The BC provincial government website states that these include political instability, poverty, racism, and colonization, gender equality, addiction, mental health, gang involvement, and online weaknesses.
Besides all these, being female seems to be the biggest feature. 95% of incidents actually reported in 2016 were women victims, and 72% of these were under the age of 25.
Human trafficking happens in every single state in the United States of America and almost every country in the world. A story of a teacher from the Philippines is an example of human trafficking.
When she tells her story, she explains that she went to the States to pursue a career in teaching. Upon arrival, she was confronted and told she must give them $16,000 to cover their services for retrieving her working visa. As part of the deal, the lady from the Philippines and others who came with her were forced to sign a contract deal promising a 10% deduction from their annual salary.
The reason the American culprit got away with this is because the Filipino descendant teacher figured out that they had no choice, that it was a common ritual. In 2011, the AAUW recognized that human trafficking was a global issue, affecting countries and communities in nearly every continent. AAUW stands for American Association for University Women. The focus on education, economy, security, and leadership, with a vision statement for equality is for all.
This, as well as other organizations, are available to support victims of human trafficking globally. Sea over sea and land over land, people are being treated like objects every single day. It is too common that young girls and boys are being snatched and illegally smuggled to a completely different country. This makes it harder for anyone to ever be found and creates a barrier for the victim to ever get help.
Human traffickers tend to manipulate these young people and convince them that they will provide them a better life than they had before. Charges are laid on people caught with immigration fine, kidnapping fine, labor laws, and sexual harassment laws, if applicable.
There are many different ways we can stop the act of human trafficking. Firstly, bring more awareness to the younger generation and teach them about what they can do to protect themselves from this danger. A predator is always looking out for people that are vulnerable, which means the victims are easily manipulated. They may be of weaker mind physically or mentally. Secondly, we can seek more support from provincial and federal governments. A national action plan was implemented in 2012 by the federal government but expired in 2016. Efforts made recently include Ottawa putting aside $2.6 million to create a national human trafficking organization.
Provincially, our Minister of Justice needs to formulate a plan with local police forces or RCMP to create more awareness and warning signs for human trafficking within their community. Technology being on the rise makes dangerous online communities for youth and adults. Together, creating accessible way to contact, catfish, and manipulate youth.
7. The scope of human trafficking is worldwide. I do not think from this research that there is a single country in the world that is not a part of this epidemic. This issue is overall outrageous and needs critical attention. The only way to solve this is mainly to work to expose and place laws in other countries besides just our own.
By placing authority in workplaces commonly run by youth and children, they can all affirm laws are commonly being used. It starts in our own country, obviously, but it's a global situation. Everyone needs to contribute to the solution of human trafficking for sexual or work and labor purposes. Chloe and I agree that this is a horrible situation. It is humane for a human to be treated like slaves for sex or work labor situation. Passing humans around like candy and taking advantage of their capabilities, we agree that this is horrendous and extremely damaging for oneself.
Victims to human trafficking are forever scarred, and I can't imagine having to live in forever fear of being abducted or found by your recent abuser. It is saddening to think people our age in high school are being taken and used in countries overseas and even in Canada.
8. It is intensely difficult to access the extent of human trafficking, as it is unknown as to how and who is being trafficked. Abusers are not going to admit to their crime they are committing for the sake of statistics. So the only people we know of are the ones that are already caught.
We cannot believe the amount of people who are unknown and are missing to their families with no leading clues as to their whereabouts. This is downright scary, and Colin and I send our most amount of sympathy to everyone that this global issue affects every single day.